Imagine saving for months, booking flights, packing sunscreen, and then immediately setting yourself on fire with a tiki torch because you thought it was a mosquito candle. That's the magic of vacation, taking a break from work just to discover new and exotic ways to humiliate yourself. Tourists will complain the sand is too sandy, confidently jump into fountains they think are swimming pools, or end up in the ER because they mistook all-inclusive for eat the shell too. And yet, these are just the warm-up acts. 1. A woman in Spain once complained to her travel agent that there were too many Spanish people in Spain. She booked a trip to Madrid, then came home outraged that the locals spoke Spanish all the time and didn't bother to learn English for the sake of visitors. This is like booking a trip to Italy and being shocked there's pasta, or going to Disney World and being appalled by the mouse. The real tragedy here isn't cultural shock. It's that this woman will probably leave a 1-star Yelp review titled "Rude Locals." 2. A man on a Caribbean cruise spent the entire time demanding refunds because the ship kept rocking. He actually thought cruise liners come with some sort of anti-ocean technology that makes the sea hold still, like a frozen video game map. When the staff explained that boats float on water, he accused them of cutting corners and demanded to speak to the captain of gravity. Imagine being so confident in your stupidity that you basically try to cancel the laws of physics. 3. A tourist in Iceland called the police because the northern lights were too bright and kept her awake. Yes, she traveled thousands of miles to see nature's most spectacular light show, then filed a noise complaint against the sky. It's like buying tickets to a Metallica concert and demanding they whisper. Somewhere in the police records is an officer forced to write, "Subject believes aurora borealis should dim after 10 p.m." Humanity is doomed. 4. A man in Rome spent €300 at a fancy restaurant and then stormed out in rage because the pasta wasn't like Olive Garden. He traveled across the ocean to the birthplace of carbonara, tasted it, and his verdict was, "Needs more unlimited breadsticks." Honestly, Italy should deport anyone who utters the words, "Where's the Alfredo sauce?" within 50 feet of a real chef. 5. A family at Yellowstone National Park put their toddler on the back of a wild bison for a photo op. The bison, not trained in Instagram posing, threw the kid like a rag doll. Luckily, the child survived, but the parents still demanded the park control the animals better. That's right, they wanted national wildlife to act like Disneyland mascots, because in their minds, every bison is basically Goofy in a fur coat. 6. A man snorkeling in Hawaii came out of the water furious because he saw too many fish. Apparently, he expected the ocean to be like a private pool, just clear, blue water, with maybe one polite goldfish doing laps in the corner. When he was told coral reefs tend to contain life, he muttered something about false advertising. Honestly, we should just start giving these people bathtubs and charging them airfare. 7. A British tourist sued a Greek hotel because there were too many cats on the island. Yes, she went to Greece, where cats basically run the streets like tiny mafia bosses, and demanded pest control. It's like going to Australia and filing a lawsuit because there were kangaroos. The woman claimed the cats stared at her judgmentally. Honestly, if the cats were judging, they were right. 8. In Paris, a man actually asked a waiter if the Eiffel Tower could be turned off at night because the lights were shining into his hotel window. The waiter, being French, probably lit a cigarette and stared at him until he evaporated. The Eiffel Tower is literally one of the most famous landmarks on Earth, and this guy wanted it unplugged like a desk lamp. He's lucky they didn't deport him directly into the Seine. 9. A woman in Florida called her travel agent to complain that her beachfront hotel had sand on the beach, actual real sand. She claimed she couldn't enjoy her vacation because sand got into her shoes, her clothes, her room, and, shocking twist, her beach chair. That's like booking a ski resort and filing a lawsuit because of snow. Honestly, the travel agent deserves hazard pay for not hanging up. 10. A tourist in Egypt was nearly arrested for trying to chip off a piece of the Great Pyramid to take home as a souvenir. When security stopped him, he whined that it wasn't fair because nobody was using it anyway. Buddy, the pyramid isn't an abandoned Lego set. It's a 4,500-year-old wonder of the ancient world. If we let every idiot with cargo shorts take a piece home, the only thing left would be a very confused camel. 11. A man in Alaska once got frostbite because he thought wearing flip-flops in the snow was fine because the air feels dry. When his toes turned blue, he stormed into the ER demanding to know why Alaska didn't turn up the heat for tourists. That's right, he thought the entire state had a thermostat somewhere. Imagine being that confident in your delusion. 12. A couple on safari in Africa complained that the lions were too far away and demanded staff move them closer. Yes, move the apex predators of the savannah like lawn furniture. When the guide explained that lions don't take reservations, they muttered about bad customer service. Honestly, if they'd gotten their wish, Darwin would have handled the refund. 13. A woman in Australia nearly drowned because she tried to walk out to the Great Barrier Reef. She thought it was close enough to stroll to from shore. Spoiler, it's 10 miles out. She made it knee-deep before locals dragged her back, still insisting she was almost there. Somewhere in her luggage was probably a guidebook titled How to Die in 30 Minutes or Less. 14. A man in Las Vegas refused to leave his hotel room because he thought the minibar was free since it was inside the room. He ate $900 worth of Pringles and whiskey, then argued that the hotel was scamming him because nobody warned him alcohol costs money. Sir, if your logic is that anything within arm's reach is free, then I guess jail will be paradise. 15. A group of spring breakers in Mexico got sun poisoning so severe they had to be hospitalized because they covered themselves in cooking oil instead of sunscreen. One of them said they'd seen it work in a TikTok video. Newsflash, TikTok is where people eat laundry pods for likes. If you're getting dermatology advice from it, you deserve to look like a rotisserie chicken. 16. A tourist in Japan actually complained that Tokyo was too Japanese. He said everything was written in Japanese, people spoke Japanese, and the food was weird. Essentially, he wanted Japan to be Orlando with sushi. Imagine going to a McDonald's and filing a complaint because it sells burgers. Honestly, Tokyo should have just deported him directly into Disneyland. 17. A man in London once called emergency services because the weather wasn't British enough. It was a sunny day, and he demanded to know where the rain was. The operator had to explain that the government doesn't control the sky like it's a Netflix subscription. The man reportedly hung up muttering about false advertising. Somewhere, Shakespeare rolled in his grave just to spit on him. 18. A woman in Venice once complained to her gondolier that the canal water was too wet. Yes, she spent $1,000 to float through the most romantic city on Earth, then filed a verbal Yelp review against H2O. She asked if the city could drain and refill it with something cleaner, as if Venice were a hotel pool. Imagine the mayor announcing, "Good news, citizens, we're swapping the Grand Canal for Dasani this weekend." Somewhere, Galileo is looking down at Italy and asking how we went from inventing science to trying to dry a river. 19. A man in Dubai nearly got arrested for climbing into a hotel fountain because he thought it was a swimming pool. Fully clothed, he cannonballed into a decorative marble basin in front of horrified families. When security dragged him out, dripping and furious, he yelled that the hotel shouldn't build such tempting pools if they're not for guests. Right, because nothing screams luxury resort quite like soaking in a puddle filled with coins, algae, and pigeons. Honestly, if Darwin had a Yelp page, this guy would have left him a glowing 5-star review. 20. A tourist in Scotland returned his rental car in pieces because he thought sheep on the road were holograms for tourists. He literally drove straight through a flock, assuming the animals were CGI props like a Disney ride. When the rental company demanded payment, he argued, "But they're not real." I love the confidence of a man who believes Scotland has invested billions in live-action holograms just to keep Americans entertained. Forget Stonehenge. This guy thinks the true wonder of the world is the sheep projector. 21. A family at Niagara Falls complained to staff that the waterfall was too loud. They actually asked if the Park Service could turn down the volume so their children could nap. Yes, folks, the deafening roar of millions of gallons of water is apparently just a rude speaker system. Imagine being so entitled that you try to put a national landmark on mute. Next up, tourists demanding Yosemite install curtains over Half Dome because it's blocking the view. 22. A man in Turkey demanded a refund at a beach resort because the ocean didn't have enough waves. He wanted dramatic, surfable curls like in a Red Bull commercial, but apparently Mother Nature was running on low power mode. When told the sea doesn't take requests, he shouted that the resort had false advertising because the brochure showed people surfing. That's like suing McDonald's because your burger doesn't look like the Photoshop picture. Somewhere Poseidon is laughing his trident off. 23. A couple in Norway nearly froze because they brought tanning oil instead of jackets, convinced the midnight sun would keep them warm. They strutted off their cruise ship in shorts and flip-flops, greased up like rotisserie chickens, only to collapse shivering on the dock. Locals had to bundle them in blankets while they demanded to know why the 24-hour daylight wasn't 24-hour summer. That's not tourism. That's natural selection dressed in Hawaiian prints. 24. A tourist in Kenya got angry when he saw zebras. Not because of danger, because they weren't black and white enough. He claimed documentaries had lied, and in person they looked kind of beige. He even filed a complaint that the animals didn't match his expectations. Sir, if you want perfect contrast ratios, go buy a printer. These aren't barcodes. They're wild animals. Honestly, I think the zebras should be the ones demanding a refund for having to meet him. 25. A woman in Thailand demanded to see the manager because her coconut tasted too coconutty. She insisted it should taste like the bottled coconut water she drinks at Whole Foods. The staff explained politely that this was an actual coconut. She rolled her eyes and said, "Well, it's not very authentic." Somewhere in the universe, a marketing executive just earned another bonus for successfully convincing people fruit should taste less like fruit. 26. A man in Alaska tried to sue a tour company because he didn't see the northern lights during his one-night trip. He argued they should provide a guarantee since he'd paid full price. When the guide explained that solar activity is not customer service, he shouted that good companies control their product. "Yes, sir, please hold while we connect you directly to the sun's manager. Honestly, if we ever do colonize Mars, this guy will be the first to complain that the dust storms were inconvenient." 27. A couple in New Orleans once called the front desk to complain that the jazz music was too jazzy. They had checked into a hotel on Bourbon Street, ground zero for jazz, then demanded quieter, more structured songs with less improvising. Essentially, they went to the birthplace of jazz and ordered it well done. The staff probably considered refunding their money and mailing them Kenny G CDs as parting gifts. 28. A man on safari demanded his money back because the giraffes were too tall. He said he couldn't get a good photo angle without craning his neck, and the animals should be trimmed down to a reasonable height for tourists. Imagine being so committed to entitlement that you suggest nature install an editing feature. Somewhere out there is a photo album filled with blurry giraffe kneecaps, and honestly, that's exactly what he deserves. 29. A tourist in Barcelona was furious that his Airbnb didn't have a Starbucks within walking distance. He messaged the host in all caps demanding to know how locals survive without frappuccinos. The host politely reminded him that Spain invented cafe culture centuries before Seattle invented pumpkin spice. He left a one-star review anyway, proving that cultural ignorance travels faster than Wi-Fi. 30. A woman in the Maldives demanded staff clean up the beach because she saw seaweed. Yes, seaweed. The ocean's version of grass. She treated it like trash, insisting that, "For the price I paid, the ocean should look tidier." That's like yelling at Yellowstone because the trees dropped leaves. Ma'am, nature doesn't have janitors. And if it did, they'd be too busy trying to mop up your entitlement. 31. A man in Switzerland was disappointed that the Alps were too pointy. He had expected gentler hills for his Instagram photos, and he loudly suggested the mountains should be smoothed down a bit to be more photogenic. Imagine standing in front of one of the most breathtaking landscapes on Earth and saying, "Hey, could use a filter." Honestly, I hope the avalanche he was waiting on delivered the edit he wanted. 32. A tourist in China got banned from the Great Wall for carving his name into the stone. His defense? "I just wanted people to know I was here." Because apparently thousands of miles of wall weren't proof enough. He basically looked at one of the world's greatest human achievements and thought, "Needs more Chad." Honestly, the Mongols didn't even bother conquering that level of stupidity. 33. A woman in New York filed a complaint because Central Park had too many trees. She thought it should be more open so she could see the skyline better. Yes, she looked at the literal oasis of greenery in the middle of Manhattan and thought, "Too much nature in my nature." This is the same brainwave as ordering a salad and being shocked there are vegetables. 34. A tourist in Morocco asked a guide if the Sahara Desert closes at night. He was dead serious, wanted to know if the dunes were shut down for maintenance after sunset. The guy just stared at him. probably wondering if it was legal to bury someone on the spot. The desert doesn't close, my dude. It's not a Chuck E. Cheese. It's an ocean of sand bigger than entire countries. But sure, maybe God flips a sign that says, closed, back at 9 a.m. 35. A tourist in Hawaii once called 911 because she got sand in her eye. Not a jellyfish sting, not a shark bite, just sand, on a beach, in Hawaii. She actually demanded an ambulance, and when paramedics arrived, she explained that the state should vacuum beaches daily. That's right, she thought Hawaii had the world's largest Roomba standing by to hoover up the Pacific shoreline. The medics flushed her eye, and probably her faith in humanity too. Honestly, if Darwin needed proof that natural selection is on strike, this woman is Exhibit A. 36. A man in Amsterdam tried to sue his hotel because the canal water outside his window didn't smell like perfume. He had read online about picturesque canals and was furious that the centuries-old waterways smelled faintly, like water that's been there for centuries. He insisted they spray Febreze daily or issue refunds. Imagine demanding a city scrub 400 years of history with lavender mist. That's not tourism, that's weaponized entitlement. 37. A couple in Las Vegas lost $20,000 at the casino and demanded a refund from their hotel because the slot machines were too shiny and distracting. Yes, their defense was basically, we didn't lose, we were hypnotized. They claimed the casino should dim the lights for guests with poor self-control. Right, because the global capital of neon lights should run on candles just so these two could keep their life savings. 38. A man in Iceland actually tried to climb inside a hot spring because he thought it was nature's jacuzzi. Spoiler, it was boiling. Locals had to drag him out before he turned into soup stock. His excuse? Nobody told me hot water could be that hot. Buddy, it's called a hot spring, not a warm suggestion. This is why warning labels exist, and also why aliens will never visit us. 39. A tourist in Mexico broke both arms trying to pet a crocodile. The best part? He climbed over a fence with a giant sign reading, "Danger Crocodiles." When questioned, he said he thought the sign was just for legal reasons, and that the crocs were probably used to tourists. Yes, because nothing says cuddly mascot like a prehistoric death lizard with 80 razor-sharp teeth. Honestly, the croc deserved the refund. 40. A woman in Dubai asked her hotel to reschedule the sunrise. She wanted to sleep in and was upset that the desert sun rose too early for her taste. She actually asked if the hotel could delay it by an hour. That's not a complaint. That's a Bond villain audition. Somewhere, NASA scientists are crying into their telescopes while this woman wonders why her Instagram photos don't match her sleep schedule. 41. A tourist in Rome was arrested for carving his girlfriend's initials into the Colosseum. When caught, he defended himself by saying, "I didn't know it was old." The Colosseum, one of the most famous landmarks on Earth, standing for nearly 2,000 years, and his defense was basically, "Oops, my bad. I thought it was new construction." Honestly, the Romans fed people to lions for less. 42. A man in Florida demanded his cruise ship turn back around because he forgot his passport. Halfway to the Bahamas, he tried to argue with the captain that it was just a quick U-turn. You know, like spinning a yacht in Mario Kart. The best part, he blamed the crew for not reminding him before departure. That's right, he thought international travel came with babysitting services. 43. A couple in Tokyo nearly got divorced mid-trip because they couldn't find a cheesecake factory. They refused to eat sushi, ramen, or literally anything local, and spent 3 days searching for chain restaurant comfort food. When they failed, they screamed at their tour guide for ruining the trip. Nothing says cultural exchange like flying 14 hours across the world to demand nachos from a mall menu. 44. A man in Canada complained that Niagara Falls looked smaller in person. He claimed the postcards were misleading and suggested the government pump more water to make it impressive. Yes, because apparently Canada keeps a giant faucet somewhere. It's the same energy as looking at the Grand Canyon and saying, "Hey, could be deeper." 45. A woman in China fell into a panda enclosure trying to take a selfie. And when the panda got curious and swatted at her, she screamed at the zookeepers that the animals should be trained to respect guests. That's right. She thought endangered bears should go through Disney princess etiquette training. Honestly, pandas are endangered for a reason. They're too polite not to eat idiots like her. 46. A man in Greece got hospitalized because he tried to conquer Mount Olympus in flip-flops. He genuinely thought climbing the mythic home of the gods was just a casual hike. Hours later, sunburned and limping, he had to be rescued by locals. When asked why he wasn't prepared, he shrugged and said, "I thought it was more symbolic." Symbolic of what? Humanity's collapse into pure, uncut stupidity? Nailed it. 47. A tourist in the Amazon actually sprayed himself with Axe body spray to repel mosquitoes. Spoiler, mosquitoes don't care if you smell like a middle school locker room. They still ate him alive. He ended up with over 100 bites and insisted the tour company should have warned him his cologne wasn't bug spray. Somewhere, a mosquito is laughing so hard it's choking on his blood. 48. A woman in Australia thought the Great Barrier Reef was fake. She snorkeled for 10 minutes, came back to the boat, and told everyone it was obviously plastic decorations for tourists. She literally thought the world's largest coral reef was an underwater Disneyland prop. Imagine flying across the world just to look at natural wonder and yell, "Props department did a great job, guys." 49. A man in Antarctica licked a metal pole in minus 40 degrees because he wanted to see if the cartoon myth was true. Spoiler, it was. He got stuck, screaming while penguins waddled by, judging him silently. When rescued, he complained the tour guide should have warned him. "Buddy, if you need don't stick your tongue on frozen metal explained to you, Antarctica isn't the problem. You are." 50. A couple in Dubai actually demanded their hotel move the desert closer. They didn't want to drive 30 minutes to see sand dunes and insisted the hotel was false advertising because the desert wasn't at the doorstep. That's right. They wanted a geological relocation. Imagine being so entitled, you expect millions of tons of sand to just shuffle forward like it's on casters. 51. And finally, the crown jewel. A man in Spain once called his embassy because the beach didn't have Wi-Fi. He was dead serious. He demanded government intervention because the sand wasn't providing wireless internet. He called it a human rights issue. Forget clean water, forget democracy. This man thought the Geneva Convention needed an update. Thou shalt not deny tourists Instagram access while they're posting pictures of sangria. And that, my friends, is humanity in one perfect story. Staring at the ocean and getting mad, it's not a Starbucks hotspot. Mic drop. And there you have it. Proof that humanity isn't circling the drain. We are the drain. 51 disasters dressed up as vacations, and somehow the bar keeps getting lower. So which one wins the crown for ultimate stupidity? Drop your pick in the comments, or better yet, share the dumbest travel fail you've ever witnessed. If you survived this roller coaster of bad decisions, hit like, subscribe, and buckle up, because the next batch of nonsense will be even dumber.